Why can't I remember my childhood? At a party, someone asked about our most embarrassing childhood moments, and everyone had stories, but when they looked at me, I had nothing. I don't really remember being a kid, I said. Like what part? Mia asked. Any of it, I said. My first memory is starting high school. Everyone laughed until they realized I was serious, and then Mia said, that's not normal. And suddenly I realized maybe it wasn't. Everyone else could remember being 7, 8, 9 years old. They had first day of school stories and childhood friends and favorite teachers. I had nothing but black space where those memories should be. That night I tried to remember being a kid and came up empty. I knew facts my mom had told me, like we'd lived in Ohio and I'd broken my arm when I was 8, but I couldn't actually remember any of it happening. I thought maybe trauma was blocking everything, which is what Google said could happen. So I went to therapy, but the doctor said trauma usually blocks specific memories, not your entire childhood. She sent me to a hypnotherapist who tried to regress me, but when he told me to go back to age 10, all I saw was black. Age 5 was still black, and he said he'd never seen anything like it. Your mind isn't blocking memories, he said. They're absent. That word absent scared me more than blocked. Blocked meant they were still there somewhere. Absent was like they'd never even existed. The neurologist found nothing wrong with my brain on the MRI, but suggested looking at old photos to trigger memories. My parents had boxes of them showing me at birthdays and Christmas and school plays, but watching them was like watching a stranger who happened to look like a younger me. You love this song, my mom said, showing me a video of 6-year-old me singing something over and over. I don't recognize it at all, I said. Her face went pale because apparently I'd sung it every single day for 2 years. She looked at me like I'd become a stranger, and maybe I had. I went to my old elementary school, but walking through classrooms where I'd supposedly spent years felt like touring a random school. The principal showed me report cards with perfect attendance and teachers' comments about what a happy child I'd been. I'd been happy and couldn't remember any of it. I started getting desperate and called childhood friends from my mom's old address book. They all mentioned the same thing. After the summer I turned 9, I was different, quieter. One girl, Anna, said I'd acted like I didn't know her when school started that fall. You looked right through me, she said, like we'd never been best friends. Then my mom mentioned something odd about that summer when I was 9. You came back different from visiting your dad. You used to be so loud and suddenly you barely talked. My parents had divorced when I was 8, and I'd spent summers with my dad but couldn't remember any of them. When I called him and told him I had no memories before age 14, he was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Maybe that's for the best, he finally said. What does that mean? I asked. Nothing, he said. I have to go. I drove to his house without calling first, and he looked terrified when he opened the door. I pushed past him and noticed all the family photos stopped at a certain point. Every picture of me as a child was gone, and the walls had light rectangles where frames used to hang. Where are the photos? I asked. I had to remove them, he said. Part of the agreement. In his storage room I found a locked filing cabinet. He begged me not to break it open, but I did anyway, and found court documents from when I was 9. Custody papers and psychiatric evaluations with words like dissociative and selective amnesia and recommended treatment. One report mentioned I'd been found at a park 3 towns over with no memory of how I'd gotten there. Another mentioned persistent claims of experiences that could not have occurred. A teacher had reported I'd been drawing the same picture over and over of something that disturbed her so much she'd called social services. What happened to me? I asked. You don't want to know, he said. Tell me, I said. I can't. The court said if you remembered on your own that was one thing, but we couldn't tell you. Agreement with who? I asked. Your mom knows, he said. Ask her about Dr. Brennan. I drove home and confronted my mom, who went white when I mentioned Dr. Brennan. We were trying to protect you, she said, starting to cry. We signed papers saying we couldn't tell you because it could trigger something. Trigger what? I asked. The doctor said if you remembered too fast it could cause another incident, she said, like the one that made us take you to Dr. Brennan in the first place. She gave me a key to a locked trunk in the attic that contained toys I didn't recognize and clothes that must have been mine, and at the bottom, a journal in my handwriting from when I was 9. The entries started normal but then got strange, mentioning things that scared me without saying what they were. Just, it happened again, and I can't tell anyone, and they won't believe me, over and over, getting more frantic. The handwriting got messier until some pages were just the same sentence written hundreds of times. I want to forget. The last entry stopped mid-sentence. Today something strange happened. A man came to school and said, but the rest of the page was torn out. Full story on the channel below.